Okay, great. Hello everyone. Before we begin, we are requesting that all members of the audience switch off their microphones to avoid background noise during the call. Could you also ensure that if your camera is on, you are comfortable with your face being on our social media or on our YouTube? If you're not comfortable, please feel free to keep your camera off.
Welcome to our webinar. So let's start with a brief introduction to Us for Planet. Us for Planet is a student-led climate change awareness organization, and we work to create monthly events about our environment. Our goal is to raise awareness and reduce our carbon footprints as a whole.
Today, our event is called The Adventures of Sri Lanka. Members of our team will be your tour guides as they take you on a virtual walkthrough of Sri Lanka and be marveled by its rich diversity.
Today's destinations are Mirisa, Sinaharaja, Horton Plains, Nuwara Eliya, Kitulgala, Udawalawe, Boondala, Tesa, and Yala National Park.
But before we start, I'd like to introduce our team. My name is Mel, and I'm the secretary for Us for Planet. We have Hashan, the founder and chairperson of Us for Planet, whose mission is to create a student-led environmental organization. Kamakshi is the vice chairperson of Us for Planet. She combines her love for art and the environment to create an impact. Dia, who's our volunteer coordinator, has been living a sustainable life and didn't even know it. She is determined to inspire others to do the same. Letitia is our second volunteer coordinator. She aims to raise awareness for climate change through engaging and meaningful conversations and debates with others. Ella is Us for Planet's marketing manager, who would like to use her powerful voice to spread the word for others. And finally, we have Ben, our photographer, who aims to convey a message through his eye-catching photos. The tour guides for our event today are Dia, Kamakshi, and Ben.
Adventures of Sri Lanka. Welcome to this online gallery featuring nearly 30 different species of wildlife in 9 different locations. If you are viewing the gallery on the ArtSteps website or app, you can click on the images. If you are not on the app or website, we will be screen sharing the event. Dia will be talking about the different national parks and their history, and Kamakshi and Ben will be talking about the wildlife and their experiences. We hope you enjoy the event, learn something new, and get inspired. We will have a small quiz at the end.
If you have any questions during the call, please ask them in the chat as we will be addressing them at the end of the webinar after the quiz. Now buckle up and allow yourself to be virtually transported to Sri Lanka.
Sri Lanka is an island country in South Asia. Located in the Indian Ocean, Sri Lanka is very close to the southeast tip of India and the Arabian Sea. It has very rich biodiversity due to its abundance of ecosystems. Sri Lanka's ecosystems mainly consist of forest ecosystems, wetland systems, coastal and marine systems, and agricultural ecosystems. Sri Lanka is considered a global hotspot for biodiversity and has the highest species density of flowering plants, amphibians, reptiles, and mammals in the Asian region. Both natural and man-made wetlands, such as Sri Lanka's 103 rivers, comprise about 15% of Sri Lanka's land area. Sri Lanka's coastline connects a number of interrelated coastal ecosystems, such as coral reefs. These provide nursery grounds to marine life, such as fish species. Sri Lanka's main form of agriculture is rice production. In fact, Sri Lanka has over 3,000 varieties of rice. Some native species include the purple-faced langur leaf monkey, the cherry-barbed red tropical freshwater fish, and the Sri Lankan jungle fowl, which is Sri Lanka's national bird. Sri Lanka is also home to 245 butterfly species, with 23 of them being endemic to the country. Our first destination is Mirisa. Mirisa is a small town on the south coast of Sri Lanka. It is most popular for its beaches and is the perfect spot for whale and dolphin watching, as you can see here.
Mirisa is the world's top location to spot blue whales as they travel to warmer feeding grounds on the Bay of Bengal. Despite their size, blue whales only consume krill, which is a shrimp in the early stage of life, and a single blue whale can consume up to 6 tons of krill in one day. Blue whales weigh approximately 33 elephants, and they have the heart the size of a Volkswagen Beetle. They have the population of blue whales across the planet is 10,000 to 200 to 25,000 blue whales. And a blue whale's tongue can weigh as much as an elephant. This was a trip that we took to Marisa in a plane. So you can visit Marisa from two different modes of transport. You can take a boat and do whale watching that way, or you can take a plane. The plane is a little bit less disturbing than a boat because the boats can sometimes go quite close, whereas these planes stay 700 meters above the surface of the water. And these planes, so we stay 700 meters above the surface of the water, and we can see the waves. And so you have to spot these whales. And when you see these waves, a lot of the time they look like white kind of foam, and you have to look for some reoccurring waves. So they're spouts of water that occur often, and this is how you can tell that it is a whale, because it's the blowhole of the whale that is kind of throwing water into the air, and this is how you can spot a whale. So once we spotted a little kind of reoccurring what looked like a whale, what looked like a wave, we decided to try and hover over there, and we found that we saw three whales there. It was a pod of whales. So whales are not extremely sociable. They congregate in small pods of about 3 whales, and in the spring, and about 50 whales in the fall. They have loose groups about 10 to 23 during feeding, but most of the time they have smaller pods. And so we managed to spot a small pod of 3 whales. So these 2 whales were swimming really nicely, and these whales do take deep dives into the ocean. So one of these whales decided to come up from the surface, and all of a sudden, as this whale was coming up from the surface, we could see a very large green, like orange substance emerging from under this whale, and we were quite surprised by this. We didn't know what this substance was, so we decided to, so the pilot mentioned that this is actually whale poo. And since whales only eat krill, their poo is actually all orange, since shrimp are orange. So this was quite interesting for us to see. Whales, in fact, have a call that reaches 188 decibels and is used to communicate with other whales across the ocean. And the average lifespan for a blue whale is 80 to 90 years. And they are as long as 3 large school buses.
Our next destination is Sinharaja. Sinharaja Forest Reserve is the largest forest in Sri Lanka and is home to over 50% of its endemic species, of primarily mammals, butterflies, and rare amphibians. In October 1988, this reserve was declared Sri Lanka's first National Wilderness Heritage Area.
So this is a layered striped squirrel, and it's an endemic species to Sri Lanka. And it's one of the 3 different striped squirrels in Sri Lanka. And the first one being the palm squirrel, and the second being the dusky striped squirrel, and then the layered striped squirrel. And the way you can identify this squirrel is by the very bright orange flame back that it has along its spine and its dark fur coat. And here, this is a Ceylon tree nymph, and it's also an endemic species to Sri Lanka, and it was first discovered in 1848. And it lives in both the wet zones and the dry zones of Sri Lanka. But these ones found in the wet zones have much darker spots and are actually smaller than the ones living in the lowland dry zones. And when we found these, they were flying together for quite a long time. And then one of them would sit on a leaf and the other one would hover above it. And it turns out that when Ceylon tree nymphs mate, they fly together around for about an hour, and then the male releases different chemicals to stimulate the female. And one of the chemicals released is called diniodine, which is a poisonous substance which protects the butterfly from predators. And this substance is later passed on to the eggs of the tree nymphs. And here is a purple-faced leaf monkey. And as Dia said before, this is an endemic species to Sri Lanka. And they're very shy compared to the other endemic species of primate in Sri Lanka, which is the tok macaque. And a few years ago, a law was set which would ban the logging of jackfruit trees, and many poor people in Sri Lanka have jackfruit trees in their garden as a source of food. So and jackfruits are purple-faced leaf monkey's favorite food. So by putting this law in place, it would allow the wildlife to strive more as well as the people. Here, this is one of my favorite moments from the trip to Sri Lanka. And these are serendip scorpsals. And they're also an endemic species to Sri Lanka. And they're also endangered. So they were first discovered in 2001. And it was the first time a new species had been discovered in Sri Lanka for over 130 years. But the call of the owl had been heard for over 15 years, and now you can listen to it.
We cannot hear.
Oh, sorry.
Ben, maybe screen share again with sound this time.
Yeah, sorry.
It's okay.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
So a great way to find different birds in foreign countries is to get help and guidance from the locals. And a local man was up at 5 in the morning to find this pair sitting in day roost. So a few hours later, we hiked up a very steep and muddy hill, and it was extremely dense forest, and it was quite a struggle, but it wasn't a problem for the local who was just running up the hill in his flip-flops. So when we got there, we had to lie in the mud, and we were covered in leeches, but it was just such an amazing experience. Here you can see some Sri Lanka frogmouse, and despite their name, they're only near endemics because not only do they live in Sri Lanka, but they also live in the Western Ghats of India. And we found this individual to the right just after we found the serendip scorpsals. And here you can see the difference between the male and the female from the color of their feathers. Next, we have the Sri Lanka scaly thrush. And thrushes are medium-sized birds which scurry around in the forest floor searching for food, and they're extremely hard to find. And we spent about 16 hours trying to find this bird over the course of 2 days. It was an extreme challenge, and we had to walk through the dense forest and along the streams for hours at a time searching for it. And suddenly it came flying out of a bush, and I even managed to capture this photo of it. Next, we have also one of my favorite experiences from the trip. It's a Sri Lanka blue magpie, which has caught a snub-nosed viper. And it was just such a crazy experience because they were fighting each other for over half an hour, and then suddenly the snub-nosed viper slipped down the hill, and the Sri Lanka blue magpie took its chance and grabbed it and flew up onto this tree.
I hope you're all enjoying this virtual safari so far. Coming up is Horton Plains. Horton Plains is the highest altitude national park in Sri Lanka, located about 2,100 to 2,300 meters above sea level. Horton Plains National Park is situated in the central highlands of Sri Lanka, which was designated in 1988.
This is a Sri Lanka wood pigeon, and it was the final endemic species of birds in Sri Lanka that my dad and I needed for the trip. We were up very early, about 5 in the morning, and we went to find this bird. And we heard that it had been found a few days earlier near a stream where the locals washed their clothes. And suddenly I could see something that almost looked like a tea bag hanging in the tree. But it turned out that it was actually the Sri Lanka wood pigeon.
Our fourth stop is Nuwara Eliya. Nuwara Eliya is a city in the hills of central Sri Lanka. It is at an altitude of 1,868 meters and is most famous for its tea production. Nuwara Eliya is also known for its cool climate. It is the coolest area in Sri Lanka.
So this is the yellow-eared bulbul, which is a native species to Sri Lanka. And you can clearly see why it's called the yellow-eared bulbul. We found this bird when we were searching for a whistling thrush near a shop. So it just came up very close to us and it was just eating from some fruits.
We have now arrived at Kitulgala, a small town in western Sri Lanka. Kitulgala is in the wet zone rainforest and is one of the wettest places in Sri Lanka. This town is also famous for its exotic birds.
Here you can see a chestnut-backed owlet, which is, as well as many of the other birds that we saw, is an endemic species. So we're really trying to shine a light on the endemic species of Sri Lanka during this trip. And we actually found this owl near a police station, which was pretty interesting. And we heard it a few times, but we're actually struggling quite a lot to find the bird. But then suddenly my dad saw it in the top of a tree calling. And here we have lesser yellow napes, and they're a type of woodpecker. And these were so fun and cool birds. They were trying to tag each other and play hide and seek around this tree. Just a really cool experience.
Coming up is Udawalawe. Udawalawe is another small town in Sri Lanka. It's famous for its dense elephant population. In fact, there is a 100% chance of you seeing an Asian elephant. Not only famous for elephants, this town is also known for leopards and various bird species. Udawalawe National Park was created to provide a sanctuary for wild animals and was established on June 30th, 1972.
So this is an Asian elephant, and more specifically a Sri Lankan elephant. So Sri Lankan elephant are a subspecies of Asian elephants. There's currently a population of 2,500 to 4,000 Sri Lankan elephants in the world, and this is the largest and darkest species of Asian elephants. They have a herd size of about 12 to 20 individuals, and the herd is led by the oldest female. And Sri Lankan elephants are now protected under the Sri Lankan law, and killing one will carry the death penalty because Sri Lanka was a very common place for elephant poaching because they're the country with the most tuskered elephants. So tuskered elephants means elephants who have very large tusks that cross. And so Sri Lanka has a lot of these elephants, and they're the most commonly targeted elephants for poachers. And so now Sri Lanka has put in place this law to protect these Sri Lankan elephants. So hopefully that's quite useful. And you can tell apart Asian elephants from African elephants by the shape of their ears. So African elephants have a lot larger ears, and they're sort of shaped like the continent of Africa. And Asian elephants also have a lot smaller and thinner ears than African elephants. So this photo was taken at the elephant orphanage. This elephant orphanage is not actually in Udawalawe. It's actually a lot closer to Horton Plains. However, we put this under Udawalawe because most of these elephants come from that national park, as this national park is a national park with the most elephants in Sri Lanka. And so most of the orphan baby elephants come from here. And so this orphanage was a really interesting experience. So we arrived and we were waiting for about 20 minutes for these baby elephants to come, and it was feeding time. So we were waiting, and then all of a sudden we hear all these baby elephants making lots of noise. And then around 10 little baby elephants come trotting in, and they start drinking milk. And then all of a sudden we hear some more loud noises from all these little other baby elephants. And then a couple minutes later, we had like 20 more baby elephants trotting in, trying to get some milk. And then every few minutes, there'd be like another batch of 20, until there were like hundreds of baby elephants in this kind of clearing. And then after they had their milk, they would all start to play in this kind of pond, and they would splash each other. And it was really interesting to see how similar we really are to animals, because they really look like just kids in like a playground, just playing and having fun. And it was a really beautiful moment to watch. This orphanage also had a lot of elephants with special needs. So for example, they had elephants with prosthetic legs. And then it was really interesting to see the human animal connection here, because these elephants could really cooperate and understand these humans. So for instance, they had to take off this prosthetic leg for them to eat. So they were really able to communicate with the people that they were working with, and I felt that was really amazing to see. Yeah.
We have now reached Bundala. Bundala National Park is an internationally important wintering ground for Sri Lanka's migratory water birds, making it a very good wetland area. Bundala ports 197 species of birds. It was designated a wildlife sanctuary in 1969 and was redesignated to a national park on 4th January 1993.
As you can see here, these are grey langurs, and they live in the lowlands of Sri Lanka. But they're also commonly seen throughout southern Asia. And they can live in troops with up to 50 individuals with a dominant male. And grey langurs are often seen with spotted deer because they can actually help each other to protect against predators, as the deer get some more eyes above the ground, and also they get fruits from the monkeys when they drop them to the forest floor, and the monkeys get a set of eyes down on the bottom.
Our journey is soon coming to an end. Our second last stop is Tisa. Tisa is a small town in the southern province of Sri Lanka, where crocodiles, peacocks, and monkeys are common sights.
Here you can see a jungle owlet, and it's quite similar to the chestnut-backed owlet. However, the jungle owlet isn't endemic to Sri Lanka. And we found this with the help of 2 young locals. And the conservation efforts by local communities are really important, as they are the ones that know the most about the animals and their behavior. And often in developing countries, some locals go out and shoot different owls and birds for food. And by the locals getting just a bit of money from bird watchers coming to visit the country's different birds, it prevents this problem. And after hearing the jungle owlet for a bit, they suddenly came darting out of the forest, and they were just such awesome and playful birds, and they almost looked like fighter jets when they were blasting through the forest. And here you can see an Indian scopsal, and this is also a very common bird throughout Asia. And the cool thing is, we found this in a local's backyard, and it was just sitting there and sleeping.
Our final destination is Yala National Park, which is located in southeast Sri Lanka. Yala National Park is a massive area of forest, grassland, and lagoons that border the Indian Ocean. It's home to wildlife such as leopards, buffaloes, and monkeys, as well as hundreds of bird species. Yala was designated as a wildlife sanctuary in 1900 and was one of the first 2 national parks to be established in this country.
This is a yellow wattled lapwing. So the yellow wattled lapwing is an endemic species to the Indian subcontinent, and it has a very sharp call and is capable of very fast flight. Although they don't migrate, they're known to make seasonal movements in response to rain. So yellow wattled lapwings really do not like rain, so they make seasonal movements based off of the rains. And they are also a gray-brown color with a black cap, as well as yellow legs and a triangular wattle on their nose and at the base of their beak. And like other lapwings and plovers, they're ground birds, and their nest is made merely of a collection of tiny pebbles within their very well camouflaged eggs are laid, and their chicks leave the nest very shortly after hatching, and they follow their parents to forage for food. And so this this little chick in this photo was spotted. So we were actually trying to take a really nice picture of this yellow wattled lapwing, and then all of a sudden we noticed this little chick following this mother, and it was a really sweet moment. So we decided to take some pictures. And so as you can see, this is a very young chick, and with other bird species, a chick this young might still be in the nest, and the mother might still be bringing food for this chick. But with yellow wattled lapwing, the chicks start to follow their mothers around and forage for food at a very young age. And I think this is something interesting to mention. I think there's some annotations on the screen.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure why that is. Sorry about that.
That's okay. So this is a robin. These are robin chicks. So these are Indian robin chicks. So these Indian robins are primarily, the males are primarily black with a chestnut bottom feathers. And although the males in the northern population have some sort of black and brownish upper parts, they're quite commonly known to have a black back. And the males also have a white shoulder patch and a relatively long tail. And these birds like to flick their tail, so they have a very significant tail movement that you can identify them by. The females have completely brown upper parts, and they lack the male's white shoulder patch. As well as this, they have a gray brownish underpart. And they're generally seen in pairs, foraging on the ground with their tail kind of cocked up, like I mentioned. They're mostly found in open country at forest edges, around human habitation, and sometimes also in scrublands. And these chicks, so these chicks were chicks that we found, and Indian robins usually lay their eggs, their nests between built rocks in holes or in walls, or sometimes in a tree hollow. So we were actually staying in the buffer zone of Yala National Park, and in the place where we were staying, there was this little shed, and we could hear some chirping. So we went behind the shed, and there's a chair like leaning against the wall, and we could see these baby chicks in this little nest that they'd created. And these chicks were really tiny. They were as big as like the tip of my finger. They were like only like 3 centimeters long. They were really tiny, and it was really amazing to see how small they were. And yeah, we were careful not to go too close to them, because if you get human kind of scent on chicks, then most of the time their parents will abandon them. So you have to be careful with that when looking at chicks. But this was still another really amazing experience.
Here's a chestnut-headed bee-eater. And as a lot of the wildlife in Yala, they're very used to the tourists and the safari jeeps. So they got extremely close to the van. And as the name suggests, they eat bees. And after catching bees, they smack off the tip of the bee so they don't get stung. And this is a lot like the kingfishers when they get fish. And then they actually leave the bees on thorns so they can eat them later.
So this is a sloth bear in Yala National Park. So sloth bears are generally solitary animals and nocturnal. So sloth bears are considered vulnerable animals. They're at the moment, they're quite threatened by habitat loss, and sometimes they're captured for their use in performances or hunted because of their aggressive behavior, or sometimes they also destroy crops in Sri Lanka, and this is why they're hunted. They're also the only bear species that carry their babies on their back. And there's two subspecies of Indian and Sri Lankan, there's two subspecies of sloth bear. There's Indian and Sri Lankan sloth bear. This is obviously a Sri Lankan sloth bear. The Sri Lankan sloth bear is a lot smaller than the Indian sloth bear, and it also has a smaller skull. And the wild population is only 500 Sri Lankan sloth bears, and the population is decreasing rapidly due to the invasion of their habitat. So this sloth bear we saw when we were in a jeep, and we were actually waiting for a leopard because we could hear some deer calls, and a lot of the time, deer calls indicate that there's leopard, and these deer are scared, so they're calling. But we were looking, and we couldn't really see any leopards or get any other sign that there was a leopard nearby. But all of a sudden we saw this kind of black thing kind of rummaging in the bushes, and all of a sudden we realized that this was a sloth bear. So we waited for about 20 minutes, and then the sloth bear kind of came out of the bushes and into this kind of grassy patch, and actually came very close to our Jeep. This photo must have been taken when the sloth bear was only like 2 meters away from me. It was really amazing. And this is actually a juvenile sloth bear. It's not a full-grown sloth bear. And I think another thing to mention was that when we saw the sloth bear, as it was such an amazing animal, a lot of people got quite excited and were making quite a bit of noise, which I think was quite disruptive. So one thing I really wanted to make sure we mentioned was when we are going to be in the forest, we have to be respectful of the fact that it isn't our home, it's an animal's home, and we have to be mindful of the fact that we're in somebody else's home, and we need to respect that. So making sure we stay quiet and not move around too quickly is something we need to make sure we keep in mind when we're visiting the forest. The next picture is of some sloth bear prints. I thought this would be interesting to show you guys because when you're trying to find large mammals in a national park, one of the main ways you can do this is by looking at their footprints. So here we can see some sloth bear mother and baby prints. So you can see the smaller prints are of the baby and the larger prints are of the mother. If you look at the Yala National Park kind of logo, like text at the bottom, there's a cross. Just above that you can see a baby print, and then you can see some of the mother prints are more significant on this. But this was something that was interesting to mention because this is how you find a lot of large mammals in national parks. So Yala National Park is known for having the highest density of wild leopards in the world, and in one area of the park, it's reported that there's 1 leopard per square kilometer, and this may seem quite a large area for just 1 leopard, but actually big cats are territorial animals, and so they need a lot of space of their own. So considering that this is a big cat and it needs its space, this is really great for trying to see leopards. And so this leopard is a Sri Lankan leopard. So Sri Lankan leopards hunt very silently. They kind of stalk their prey until it's within striking distance, and then once it's within striking distance, it kind of releases a burst of energy and speed to quickly kind of pounce on this animal that it's trying to catch. And they usually kind of dispatch their prey with a single bite to their neck, and this is like very similar to most cats, but like most cats, it's also quite pragmatic in its choice of diet. So the diet can include small mammals, some birds, reptiles, as well as some larger animals as well. So for example, the Sri Lankan axis deer or spotted deer make up the majority of its diet in the dry zone, and animals in the wet zone can also prey on sambar deer or barking deer, as well as wild boar and monkeys. So this leopard, this was a very interesting leopard sighting. So we had seen a leopard before in this national park. We had seen one from a very long distance. It wasn't a great sighting, but we saw a leopard. And this was our last safari. It was quite late, and we were really exhausted because we'd been waking up at like 5 o'clock every day for morning safaris, and we were really determined to see a leopard on our last safari. So we put our mind to it, and as soon as we entered the park, we heard this call. We heard a deer call, and we were like, oh my goodness, there's a leopard here. But it was quite in quite a bit of dense forest, so we weren't able to see it or get any other signs that there was a leopard there. So we decided to move on, come back later. So we went through the whole national park. We didn't see any other leopards. It was kind of a bit of a bummer. And so the last 5 minutes, the park closes at 6, so you have to be out before 6. So at 5:45 and 5:55, we were leaving the park, and we were coming back on the same road. And leopards prefer to walk on the road because their paws are very sensitive, and they don't like to get their paws injured, because if they get their paws injured, they can't hunt, and essentially they'll starve to death. And so they prefer to walk on the road, which is soft, rather than in the bushes, because there's thorns and stuff. So they're very particular animals. And so so we're coming back, and all of a sudden we're going really quickly because we wanted to make sure we made it out on time. And then we kind of brake very quickly, and then all of a sudden there's a leopard in front of us. And I remember being really scared. I was shaking because we were so surprised to see this leopard in the last 5 minutes, and it just walked very nicely next to our Jeep for like a couple minutes, and then it went into the bushes. But it was a really nice sight of a female leopard. So this is a Sri Lankan jackal. So Sri Lankan jackal is one of 13 subspecies of golden jackal. And as you can guess by its name, this jackal lives in Sri Lanka and also some southern parts of India. The jackal is slightly smaller than a wolf, with smaller legs, body, and tail overall. It's covered with black and white fur with a brown background. And this jackal is a very skilled hunter and scavenger. It's a carnivore and a herbivore. And as pack animals, they can organize and take down a very large prey. And the packs can also sometimes wait for other predators to make a kill, finish the kill, and then they can scavenge on the rest of the food. The jackal has a very large variety of diet that consists of small animals, including rodents, birds, mice, young gazelles, reptiles, and also fruits. And this diet allows the jackal to thrive in varying niches that include forests, grasslands, semi-urban, rural, and other areas. So we saw these two jackals when we were leaving the national park. So this was in a buffer zone. And we saw these two leopards just sitting in the sun, kind of like sitting with each other. So you won't usually see jackals on their own because they live in packs. So we saw these two together, and they were sitting in the sun for like 30 minutes, and it was a really nice sight.
We have now finished our virtual journey of Sri Lanka. Thank you for your attention and patience.
Really quickly. So this is a elephant. So here you can see that this is another Asian elephant. So this was actually a very sad sighting because this mother had a broken wrist, and this mother was kind of limping, and it was very painful to watch. But so see, if this mother wouldn't have been able to survive, then this baby would probably go to the elephant orphanage. But it wasn't very nice to see. But it was. Yeah, it's kind of the harsh reality of some animals in the forest that they can't really get access to healthcare. Yeah.
So on a more positive note, we found this Asian elephant splashing around in a waterhole, and it was just a really beautiful experience and a great end to the trip.
We now hope that you've learned something today and will one day visit the beautiful country of Sri Lanka. Now is the time for the quiz that we mentioned at the beginning. Do you think you're ready? Let's see.
Okay, so I will quickly share screen. So we're going to be doing this quiz on Kahoot. So if you take out your phones, then we're going to do this quiz on Kahoot. So you can go to kahoot.com. I will share screen, and how it's going to work is the questions will be on my screen and you'll submit the answer on your screen. It's just multiple choice. It's very simple, and we have a practice question in case you would like to see how to do it as well. So here, let me share screen. So the game pin should appear on the screen in a minute. Okay. Here. So you can basically enter this game pin. So search up www.kahoot.it and enter this game pin. And we do also have prizes for the winner. If you could mute if you're not. Could you mute anybody whose sound is on? Yeah. So at the moment, if you just enter your name and join the Kahoot, then we can begin. Yeah. Hopefully, no one from the Us for Planet team joins the webinar. And so after the Kahoot, keep in mind, if you have any questions, feel free to add them in the chat, because right after this Kahoot, we're going to be announcing the prizes and the winners. And then we will have a chance for you to, ask some questions, or we'll answer the questions that have been asked in the chat. Okay, so is everybody ready? If you're not ready, then just turn on your mic and shout out, or else I'll begin in a couple minutes. In a minute, I think. I think that sounds like everybody's in. Is everybody in? I think so. Okay. So we can start the Kahoot. Did someone want to say that they couldn't get in? Okay. So I'm going to start the Kahoot now, and how it's going to work is I'll have the questions. I'll read out the question. It will also be on the screen, and then you need to select the correct option. There'll be a corresponding color to the answers on my screen to yours as well as yours. So the first question this is a practice question. So the first question is, what is the first letter of the alphabet? Just to see that you understand how to enter the Kahoot, and then so you can select based off of the options. So on the screen, you should be able to see the options, and then, yeah. And the questions will be from the content that we've covered during this webinar. Okay.
Will you also just read out the answers when you say the questions? Because some of us have the
Kahoot on your
network, and we're also on our phones for the Zoom session.
Okay, yes, sure. So
yeah, so we've logged into the website for Kahoot, and the webinar is on the same.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So the first question, okay, 3 people got it wrong, which is quite surprising, but it's okay. So if anybody has any questions, then now's the time to ask before we go on to the next question on how to use Kahoot. Any other questions? I'm going to read out all the answers as well as all the as well as the question. So the next question, so the first question is, why is blue whale poo orange? So the green option is they eat krill, blue is they eat coral, red is no specific reason, and yellow is they ingest toxins. So feel free to select your answer. Okay. Well done. Wow, 12 people got that right. Okay, the next question. Oh, Aster, you're first. So now, how long did it take Ben to find the scaly thrush? 16 hours, 17 hours, 6 hours, or 10 hours? Wow, this is very impressive. I'm very impressed. Well done to Tommy Mode, who is in first place. The next question is, in which location was a layered striped squirrel? Sinharaja, Horton Plains, Yala National Park, or Udawalawe? We have some very cool prizes at the end for the winners. So first, second, and third place all get some prizes. This was a challenging question, so I'm not very surprised by the results. In first place is still Tommy Mode. So is the Ceylon tree nymph endemic to Sri Lanka? Yes or no? Well done. Wow, this is really great. Oh, wow. Look, my mom's winning. What type of owl is this? Is this a jungle owlet, chestnut-backed owlet, serendib scops owl, or an Indian scops owl? That's correct. It is a jungle owlet. And Aster is in the lead again. Well done, Aster. Aster is like 4 years old. The next question is the chestnut-headed bee-eater endemic to Sri Lanka? This is a challenging question, I think. It's a trick question, maybe, is a better way to phrase it. Okay. Next, the current winner is now my dad. So where did we see the sloth bear? Did we see it in Yala National Park? Did we see it in Nuara Eliya, Bundala, or Kitulgala? I think a way to try a hint to a tip maybe to answer these questions is think about the order that we did the locations and the order that we did the animals might be helpful. Our current person in the lead is still my dad. Now we have, how can you tell apart the different genders of the Sri Lankan frogmouth, their size or their colors? And another tip for this question is to look at the photo. Their color. So now Morton is in the lead. I'm sorry, this is all of our family members who are currently winning. So now the next question is, what animal prints are these? Is it the sloth bear, jackal, or leopard? Okay, well done, guys. The next question is still same in the lead. What snake fought with the Sri Lanka blue magpie? Bronzeback snake or the snub-nosed viper? This is the last question, I think, yeah. All right, snub-nosed viper. And so the podium for our quiz. Aster in third place. Okay, so the winners for the winners for the quiz. I'm so sorry. The winners for the quiz are I'm sorry, this is literally all of our family. So Morton, Ajoy, and Aster. So the winners for the first place is you can select your favorite photo from our exhibition, and we will post it to you as a postcard, which you can use to send to anybody as a free Us for Planet postcard. And the winners for second and third place is that your favorite wildlife photo will be featured on our Instagram page. So well done to our 3 winners. And yeah, thank you. So now we have an opportunity for questions. Let me just really quickly stop screen sharing and then we can ask the questions. Okay, so I think we have a lot of things in the chat. So let me try and find the first question. So the first question is from Caesar. What kind of plane did you take? So we took a very, I don't know what type of plane it was, but it was a 4-seater plane. So it could only fit 4 people in this plane. And yeah, it was a very small plane. It had like I had an engine at the front. I had like a propeller at the front, and it was a 4-seater, very small plane. That was the first question. And
Did you open the windows, or was it like a hole in the floor of the plane to take pictures? How did it work?
No, there was windows. So basically, we would be able to sit, and then the windows were kind of at elbow height to like up here. It was we had like windows, but we didn't. It was not open. Nothing was open. It was fully closed. Not great if you're claustrophobic, but I think it was pretty cool. So it was literally only me and then the pilot and then my mom and then my dad. Yeah, it was quite tight. Anybody else have any other questions that they'd like to ask? I think you can just turn on your mic and ask. How long were you guys there for? Ben, do you want to go first?
So I was there for 11 days and we saw 230 different bird species in the 11 days.
So I was there for, I'm just trying to pull up the number of animal and bird species that we saw, but we were there for, I think, 10 days, around a week, and we saw 23 different animal species, and 1 second, just trying to check how many, 51 different bird species. So, not to Ben, but yeah, we did see a lot of many cool species. Does anybody else have any questions? You can just turn on your mics and go ahead.
My dad asked, if the snub-nosed viper had bitten the magpie, do you think it would have killed it? And snub-nosed vipers are actually not venomous, but the wound could have gone infected, but I doubt that it would have been lethal.
Which animals you saw were the most endangered and what are their ecological functions? I think the most endangered species that we saw is probably the sloth bear. They're considered quite endangered because their kind of habitat is being they have a lot of habitat loss, and their population is probably the most vulnerable because their population is decreasing the fastest as well as they have the smallest numbers, which together is not very great. I don't really understand the second question. Do you want to maybe ask it in a different way, Caesar? So what are their ecological functions?
So sometimes some animals are really important to, say, if they are top predator, they're important because they control smaller animals, or maybe some of them are at the bottom of the food chain, but they are very important because they are food for many other species.
Mm-hmm.
So is the sloth very important for the ecosystem?
Yeah, so the biggest mammals in Yala National Park are the leopards and the sloth bear. So the sloth bear is quite important to the ecological to the kind of food chain as well, because they kind of balance, like, for sometimes if you don't have many leopards or like large mammals that will eat some of the deer or some of the like langur and stuff, then you can have like very exceeding populations of deer and things. I think everything is needed to kind of have a good ecosystem. So I think it would fall without having one of them. Ben, do you want to add something to that? Sorry, I completely forgot.
So yeah, I agree with Kamachi. I think if any species goes extinct within an area, something will go out of balance and it will affect the ecosystem in some way or another, sometimes more major than others.
All right, great. So I think this was really great. I think somebody says they have to go. So quickly before you go, if you won a prize, then we will be emailing you to confirm which postcard you'd like or what photo you'd like to feature for us to feature on our page. But otherwise, I think that's mainly it. If you have some more questions, feel free to stay back and ask them. Anything?
Just to confirm, for second and third place, the favorite wildlife photo that you will choose is a photo that you have taken that we will be publishing on our account.
Yes. So we had some more questions. Everybody who needs to leave is completely welcome to leave now. We'll stay and continue answering questions in the meantime. So we had another question, which was, which animals in Sri Lanka do you love most and why? Ben, do you want to go first?
I think it's the people of Sri Lanka.
Oh.
That's quite a hard question. I don't actually know the answer to it, but I would assume it'd be like elephants or leopards, but I'm actually not quite sure.
Yeah. So I think for me, I love whales, so mine was definitely the blue whale. Yeah. Somebody said that I was their favorite animal. I'm not an animal. I mean, technically I am. I think my least favorite animal, I don't think I like to have least favorite animals. One of my, I think I was a bit really scared of these ants. So there's these type of ants that make very big, they're called, I don't remember what they're called, but they make nests. And my dad had fun kind of shaking these nests to get the ants to fall on them. To fall on me, so that was kind of scary. So yeah, I think that was my least favorite animal. But otherwise, I don't really dislike any animals. We had some more questions. Was what about the opposite? Which animals do Sri Lankans like and dislike the most? Oh, I think, I don't know. I really don't know. Ben, do you want to talk about the owl thing that you were mentioning?
Oh yeah, so some human-animal conflict can arise, of course, like everywhere, but in Sri Lanka, like there have been like many cases of actually elephants being hit by the trains in Sri Lanka, and also quite recently a melanistic leopard was killed. So melanistic, so it's completely black, so it's a completely black leopard, and it was recently killed, but I mean, it was recently like injured through human-animal conflict, and efforts were made to try to save it, but it unfortunately died a few days after. But it's hard to say which animals do Sri Lankan people dislike the most, because it depends. Because for farmers, like, or people that raise cattle, for example, or especially in Sri Lanka with the tea plantations, many people die in Sri Lanka of snake bites in the tea plantations, because obviously the snakes are just hiding, and then they might get stepped on in the plantations. So I think it depends very much on where it is and who they are.
I think one more thing to add is that Sri Lanka is not a very wealthy country. So maybe another thing that people might consider when choosing their favorite animal is a country that would contribute to the economy maybe in some way. So for example, whale watching contributes to the economy and quite significantly, because Sri Lanka is the best place to see blue whales in the world. And blue whales are the largest animal on the planet. So loads of people like to come to see that. And I think that's another thing that might contribute to why people like different animal species. We had some more questions. Let me have a look. Another question was, if you were living in the wild in Sri Lanka, what would you eat? Ben, do you have an answer to that?
Well, it depends on how alone I am, I guess, and how far away from society I am. But if it was like worst case scenario, probably wild boar. But honestly, I'm not too sure. I don't think I'd ever be in that scenario, but I mean, it's an interesting question.
Yeah, I mean, I was about to say maybe some fruits, like some fruits and some vegetables. Yeah, it would have been good to go on that foraging trip today and learn what I could eat in the forest. Yeah, I don't know what else I would eat in the forest. But yeah, I think that makes sense. Any other questions do we have? I don't think we have any other questions. But yeah, I think if that's it, then thank you everybody so much for coming. It was really great to have you. Again, we'll email you if you have prizes. Yeah, thank you so much for coming. Monitor lizards, how large are they? Monitor lizards are, so they can be very, I mean, monitor lizards or land monitors or water monitors, because they're all different. Are you trying to turn the mic on? Oh my goodness.
Land monitor, Kamakshi.
Okay, land monitor. Okay, so land monitor, I can answer, and then maybe Ben, you can add if you want. So there's one land monitor that I saw that was like this big. They can vary in size, but we were once at a parking lot, and there was a land monitor that was like huge. It was like 1.5 meters, probably maybe. There's a lot of like babies here, well, young kids here. But yeah, I think they can vary in size. It depends on how old they are and whether they're land or water monitors. Ben, is that right, or anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think they're about 1 meter long. That's probably like the average length.
We would like to share some feedback. Okay, sure, go ahead. Are you going to type the feedback or turn on the mic?
Don't we have the feedback forms as well, don't we?
Yeah, we do have a feedback form, which we'll be sending everybody who attended the webinar, so that you can share some feedback, or you can share now as well. Good night, Esther.
There is another question.
Yes, what's the question?
Caesar, you asked where we're going next.
Ooh.
That's a surprise, so you can stay tuned for our next location.
Yes, or that like quarantine is a lot better.
Yeah.
And the quarantine kind of restrictions are a lot better. We're hoping to have some events over the summer, so we'll hopefully try and do that. Yeah. I am okay. So wait. So we have some feedback. I think it was good photos and lots of but where's that? Okay, I'm a bit confused. So it says, I think it was great photos, lots of passion. I'm truly inspired by the quality of the materials. Thank you. That's really great feedback. Otherwise, I think we're good. Sorry about laughing. It was just really funny that all of our parents who had been on the trips with us were the ones who are winning these quizzes. But yeah, otherwise, I think it's really great. Thank you for coming and staying all the way till the end. Love your photos, your research, and love the Kahoot and the prizes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming and
Thank
staying.
you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Stay till the
Thank
end.
you.
Esther just wants to say he's 3.5, not 4.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And he didn't go to Sri Lanka.
And what?
And he didn't go to Sri Lanka. You're saying that the people who won were all people who went on the trip.
Oh, right.
But your presentation was so good. He obviously was able to get third place.
It was so good that I just thought that he must have been Sri Lanka. How else would he have won? So great. Thank you, Esther.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, parents. Okay, you guys.
And friends.
Yes, bye, parents and friends. Bye, Adia.
Bye, Sita.
Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you for
We
joining.
hope you enjoyed.
Thank you.
Next time.